There we go. I fixed it. Stupid buttons. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Space Game Junkie podcast. I, as always, am your co-host Brian, and joining us, as always, is your co-host Spaz.
Hello.
Your co-host Julie.
Hey there.
Your co-host Torsten. Torsten.
Hello.
And your co-host Jacob.
There's coffee in that nebula.
I never get tired of that line. It's probably like one of the best lines of the whole show, right there. It's so sad they blew it early.
Was feeling Star Trek, mostly just looking at the footage. Anyways, let's carry on.
Yeah, folks, if you're curious, this week we're going to be talking licensed games. So on the background of the stream, I've got the quote unquote classic Star Trek game, Star Trek Legacy, streaming back there. It's not classic. It's not good. It's just, I thought this would be a fun example of a not so great licensed game. But this topic was Torsten's idea. I'm sorry, Torsten. And so Torsten, could you talk to us about how you came up with the idea? Like, give us, like, where did this idea come from? And then we'll get into the actual discussion.
Well, it's pretty simple. If you look at the general the general IPs that are taken, that you see that it's always the big three. I call it the big three. It's mostly Star Wars, Star Trek, and Warhammer 40k. And the quality of the games, especially the AAA games, is sometimes a bit questionable in my opinion. And there are so many other IPs that could be used. I see right now, obviously, Babylon 5, for example, or there are so many other ones that could be taken, and nobody takes them, and I wonder why.
And it just want to chime in. It's a real shame that Babylon 5 game they had back in the day. What was it called? Was it called Let's Find Her or something like that? There was there was an actual one coming out. I got to play it at E3 in 2000. It was being made by I think the folks at Sierra, if I remember correctly.
It was Sierra.
Oh, that's right.
It looked pretty good.
And yeah, it was. What I played of it, it was a very early build, but what I played of it, I believe it was 2000, was really good. And then it just kind of went just like nothing came of it. Yeah, so that is a really good point. There are a lot of IPs, tons of great IPs out there that you're like, why isn't this a game? And so I think we all have some in our heads as to what we'd like to see. Torsten, why don't we start with you, since this was your idea? What is an IP that you think would make a great video game?
Oh man, I've got so many, and I concentrate on the books.
Okay.
Let's start with the military science fiction one, the Honor Harrington series by David Weber.
Honor Harrington, yeah, good stuff.
Yeah. There are so many things in this series which would make a good game. The kind of warfare, the kind of space warfare is completely different from other space war IPs. I think with all these rolling ships, rolling their shields in the direction of the incoming fire and so on. And that's just one example. Another example would be that's not especially a space game related, but it's the Hammer Slammer series from David Drake. That's a futuristic tank. About it, a mercenary tank regiment, and this would make a pretty good game too. But nobody, even not nobody has taken up the IP. Not even they were not even mods made for this.
Yeah, that is a good point. That like no one has even made mods. Like there's plenty of Star Trek mods out there. There's plenty of Star Trek mods out there. It's not like there's lack of fans of things like Hammer Slammers and Hunter Harrington.
Now, interestingly, there is a mobile game for the Hunter Harrington series.
Is there?
Yeah, I wanted to mention that.
They made it on Android, but it's unfortunately very pay to win, and not that great.
It's the usual.
Yeah, it's a tie-in that is an unfortunate.
It's one of these.
Exactly. It's an unfortunate casualty of its platform.
That's sad.
Another one is a topic of role-playing games. The last Traveler game we got that was 30 years ago or something.
Traveler? Yeah, it's been a while.
It's been a few decades.
What, for the role-playing game, there hasn't been a new Traveler installment in a while?
Oh, several in between.
Oh, wait, are you talking about, like, there were Traveler video games where there hasn't been one in a while? Is that what you're saying?
No, there hasn't been one in a while, but on the pen and paper topic, there were still several versions. And there was a GURPS Traveler version in between, and currently is Mongoose publishing. The ones that holds the license. And I really don't know why Traveler was never taken up anymore in between.
Oh, were those Mega Traveler games? Sorry, were those Mega Traveler games from the 80s? Was that Traveler? Is that
Yeah.
is?
Yeah.
Oh,
yes.
I was never 100% on that. I played one of those. Those were pretty neat. Back in the day.
It's a fascinating universe.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No. That's a universe that's completely completely done in a way, yes, and it's logical. Oh, and I see in the chat somebody mentions Starfire. Originally not a novel series, it was a board game. That's another one. For an IP that's more or less dormant.
I've never heard of that one.
Yeah, as I said, it's a board game. It's pretty old. I think it was in the early 80s or something.
Wasn't Star General based on a book? I think.
Yeah, I think it was a Fleet series.
Yes,
if I remember that correctly.
Because that was also David Weber, if I'm remembering correctly. I think. Oh my God, my brain. But yeah, there were like, how many Hunter Harrington books have there been, and Hammer Slammer books have there been? There've been a lot, right? There've been a lot, and it is surprising that there is no video game coverage of either of those, really. I mean, they're not that complex. Like I read the first Hunter Harrington book a while ago. I don't know why I haven't read subsequent books. But like the space battles are pretty good, but nothing like too complicated. So I don't see why they couldn't be made.
Yes, no Lost Fleet. You wouldn't need freaking 15 Newtonian physics engines and how to calculate light delay and all that other nonsense.
You know what? That was going to be my suggestion.
Lost Fleet?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's in mind too.
Well, the issue with that would be, as I've just said, you create either something that is untrue to the spirit of the series, or something that requires as much overhead as DCS World in terms of how much stuff you have to process in order to play it.
I'd do it.
Probably.
If they made a Lost Fleet game that was as button mashy as DCS and you needed to like deal with, light minutes and crap like that, I would, oh my God, I don't know if I'd play anything else.
I mean, it would be the sickest thing ever.
Maybe that's why they haven't done it.
I mean, yeah, but I imagine there will be exactly 2 people that will play that, and that's us 2.
Oh, maybe
you might be right.
Okay, 3 people.
Okay, 3. That's 3. That's exactly 3 people.
But if we gave them enough money between the 3 of us, maybe they would.
We might get something out of it. Yes.
Maybe we just.
And at that point, I feel like we'd better off be just playing Aurora 4X.
Oh God. No.
It would just be Aurora 4X, but with a license at that point.
No, not that. Please not that.
Anything but that.
Oh God. I'd rather take the comfy chair. Oh God. Oh yeah. No. Anyway, Torsten, did you have any others?
Oh, a lot.
Well, give me a couple more, and then we can circle around to some of the other people, and if we have more time, we can come back. How's that sound? Because I want to give everyone a chance. I want to give everyone a chance to throw their hat in the ring. You know what I mean?
Pretty good. Another thing I've noticed a lot of the older stuff, Silver Age things. The IPs like dormant or are in the public domain, and just as an example, nobody did a proper Starship Troopers game.
I mean, there's one coming out like next year, so.
No, that's not a proper Starship Trooper game.
Define proper.
More like the books and not based on the movie.
So that would be the board game versions. There have been 2. One that was released in, I believe, the late 70s. And then there was another one that was based off of the movie, but still pretty good for its time.
Yes, I thought of the one from the late 70s by Avalon Hill, if I remember correctly. And
it's strange because they converted so many Avalon Hill games to the computer. They converted quite a few Avalon Hill games to the computer. Why not that one?
They didn't convert the Dune game either.
They had a Dune game?
There have been actually multiple Dune games. There have been multiple Dune board games that were never converted.
Oh, I wonder why. I wonder if there was a licensing thing or something. You'd think those would be popular I think there'd be a lot of crossover between fans of the board game and like they made Renegade, for God's sakes, which is a board game. They made that on the computer. Why not bring over these other properties, for God's? It's so confusing.
Well, a lot of it comes down to licensing rights because they've got the license to make one adaptation, and that's all they got.
Oh.
That's usually how it works with board games. They get one licensed board game, and that's it.
Oh. That's not great.
Yeah, it's a bit sad. Another example I would bring up, which would be pretty ideal for a computer game, for several computer games, is H-Beam Piper's Star Viking. Sadly, not very well known today anymore.
Yeah, that's a first for me. You have to
also
explain what it is.
Yeah, I've also never heard of it.
Star Viking?
No.
Oh, okay.
Negative.
I put a link in the chat later. That you've got to then you can see it for yourself. Well, as I said, it's a pretty good background that was never made in any game. The only ones I remember of are the third iteration of the Traveler role-playing games that took the concept, and there was also a board game in the early 80s. But that's all.
So what is tell us about the property itself.
It's mostly about an empire war that has fallen down, and some adjacent worlds that didn't lose all the technology or so are starting to rebuild the empire again. And they start like the historical Vikings and start raiding those all those theoretical planets.
Interesting.
I'm a bit surprised you never heard of that before.
What's it called again? It's not Star Vikings, right? It's
Star Vikings. Still, only Star Vikings. The Star Viking.
Okay, there's so many. Okay, I'm trying to look it up, and there are a million things called Star Vikings. Like apparently, there's a book series there's a book that came out in 2014. Hang on, Star Vikings book series. God, I'm not finding that. I mean, it's not I don't believe you. It's just there's so many things called Star Vikings. Dear Lord. Like there's a game called Star Vikings that's on Steam right now. But it has nothing, I'm sure it has nothing to do with what you're talking about.
Sadly a slightly El Generico name.
Yeah, the first thing that comes up is a book from this series called Extinction Wars by Von Heppner. That's called Star Viking. That's like the first. That's like dominating Google. That came out in 2014, so that cannot be what you're talking about. Yeah, link it to us later because I am not. This is.
Wait a moment. I'm searching for the link.
Hey, no worries. We'll come back. We can circle back to that. So Spaz, let's get a suggestion from you. What's a property you would love to see made into a game?
Well, I think this one is it's criminally underused, but also because the original property was canceled. Space Above and Beyond.
Oh, you took another one of mine. Damn it.
It's like we completely share interest in media.
God. Anyone listening to the show would probably already know exactly what I'm talking about, and it needs no further exposition as to why it should have been made into a game property.
That could have been made into multiple games. It could have been made into a Wing Commander style game. It could have been made into a first-person shooter. It could have been made into like a Space Harpoon style.
Carrier Command.
Yeah. You could have had multiple games based on that IP, but
it's not all at once. That's not going to work out, please.
Oh,
yeah,
man.
Yeah.
Because
there wasn't even a mod for Armor.
Yeah, I was waiting for I loved that show. I watched it when it was on, and I didn't realize it wasn't getting any viewers until they announced it was canceled. I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah, because the issue it had is it was Battlestar Galactica before Battlestar Galactica was like ready, before the viewers were ready for it, I guess.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Reboot was ready.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Because like, as far as the genre of like hard ass military sci-fi, like it was very much the progenitor, but the big one was the remake of BSG.
Yeah, and
both were great shows.
Yeah, but this came out
past season 2. BSG is not worth the effort, but that's besides the point.
No, I'm with you on that. Like, after they leave New Caprica, they should have just stopped. They should have just stopped the show. Been done with it.
Stop.
Yeah.
We're past the good parts. Still downhill from here. Anyways, yeah. Space Above and Beyond has a lot of... Actually, that is something I'll mention later related to it. Because it's a similar genre. Actually good Aliens games. Like an actually good... specifically an actually good Colonial Marines game, Gearbox. Sorry, I have a personal vendetta against Randy Pitchford for a variety of reasons. Okay, so for similar reasons, because there's a lot of variety of that. Like we had great horror games. Alien Isolation is really good.
Oh yes,
but like Aliens Colonial Marines was terrible, and then we had like Fireteam Elite, which was a Left 4 Dead ripoff, which was underwhelming.
Didn't they fix the Colonial? Didn't they fix the Colonial Marines games though?
Not enough for it to be fun, enough for it to not be abjectly horrible. Because like fixing Colonial Marines to full would involve just making a new game.
It brought it up to average.
Yes, it brought it up to average.
We played it once and we enjoyed it, but we were never like, we have to play this again. We were just like, okay.
It wound up woefully underwhelming while also being in development for like 15 years or some insane number like that.
It had a lot of potential, but it's a shame about that one. But
like, and like, you think a horde shooter about xenomorphs would not be difficult to make, and we got Fireteam Elite, so it can be good. But
going back to Space Above and Beyond, like they had a very they had a very interesting alien race in that one that we barely got to know, and that could have made for really intriguing video games. We might have gotten to know more about that alien race, but it never. I'm still angry about Space Above and Beyond. I'm still.
Me too.
I'm okay. I'm gonna say something that's gonna get me excommunicated again. I think I'm more angry about Space Above and Beyond than I am about Firefly.
No, that's fair.
That is not unfair. No, that is not unfair. Knowing what we know now about Joss Whedon, especially, yeah,
exactly. In hindsight, it's not necessarily an unfair statement.
I don't even know what that. I don't even know what that is, and I don't think it's relevant to the convo. So I'll ask about that later.
But it's not unfair. As much as I love Firefly, I think as a long-term show, you could have done a lot more with the war setting of Space Above and Beyond.
Definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
Considering, well, we barely got started by the time the show ended, as far as I remember.
God, I know. I mean, yeah, the war wasn't over. It was over for those characters, which again, still angry. Oh my God, I'm so. Now I want to watch the show again, but I can't because I know how it ends, and I'm just so.
And you're gonna be mad forever.
Yeah.
So,
but that's a really good one. Sorry, go ahead, Jacob.
Well, I'm wondering what else to say, because as far as like licensed games, I am from the country that produced The Witcher, so obviously I have an interesting perspective of seeing both a lot of good and having played a lot of terrible ones. A bit of history, because I played both The Witcher 3 and which was, excellent. And a lot of the like dodgy licensed games that came out in the mid 2000s, like the James Cameron's Avatar, which had all the effort in the wrong places. I'll put it that way.
Wait, was there an Avatar game?
Yeah, and it had a mountain of like a chunk of the film's budget put into it, which, you know, was a hell of a budget.
Really? I don't remember that at all.
And it came out, it was a rather mediocre third-person shooter, honestly. Like, it had some cool ideas, an actual branching path storyline. Well, okay, it had a single branch at the beginning, but it still counted as a branching path storyline. And for a licensed game, it was ambitious, but it turned out, in terms of gameplay, to be a rather underwhelming thing. Some people actually suspected it was supposed to be an MMO, but due to it requiring even more budget money that was thrown at it, it was turned into an underwhelming third-person shooter.
Yeah, you think of the contrast between that third-person shooter I've never heard of that was based on a property and the Riddick third-person game. That was
first-person, but yeah,
was
holy
that first?
Hell!
Yeah, like
Assault on Dark Athena was first-person, and it was good shit. Sorry.
Yeah, really was good.
Yeah, like it just amazes me how you can throw so much of a budget at a license like Avatar and come up with something apparently forgettable, because I don't even remember.
You're not missing out.
And then you have something with a much shorter, smaller budget, but made by apparently more passionate people, like the Riddick game, that just does a much better job with its license.
I mean, it did good enough a job to warrant a sequel that was also really good.
Yeah, exactly. My lord.
When it comes to licensed games, I've noticed it's kind of an interesting pattern in that the way they seem to best work is you give them to people that know the setting and want to make something good with it, and then you leave them alone.
I think, and maybe this is another topic, the leave them alone part is so important because a lot of these games and movies and whatnot you hear that do really well, they were left alone. Like Deep Space Nine, I'm going to bring that up for a second. They did Deep Space Nine. One of the reasons they did so well is because the people who were in charge were like, you guys do what you want. We're going to focus on Voyager.
And Deep Space Nine turned out better than Voyager.
Exactly.
Yes. But like, in addition to specific, like, because I mentioned Witcher 3 because it's really good. But maybe not one of the reasons why it turned out great, but okay, honestly, one of the reasons why it turned out great is because they had 2 games before it to practice, because game 1 was honestly not as good as people like. It's good because it's part of the Witcher series. On its own, it's rather underwhelming. It's a mid-shelf like RPG that's just Gothic 1 but worse. But to summarize, Witcher 3, like, the actual author of the book went, all right, what's a video game? Okay, cool, like, hand me over like $2,000 in cash and you'll have the license, now sort off. And then he was extremely mad because, you know, it became a multi-million-dollar franchise that he could have made absolute dosh on, and he did through like advertising basically. But
he like sold the rights away.
Yeah, he sold the rights away for a flat fee. He did not ask for royalty because he didn't know what a video game was and never thought anyone could ever bother with it.
Oh no!
And then later on, he tried to sue CDPR, and the lawsuit went nowhere because because you know the contract said you had over $2,000. Sod off.
Oh no!
Your very signature is on the fact that you don't want any royalties. You ain't getting any royalties.
Oh, God.
Well, that's his mistake, and he gets to live with it. Except he's not complaining too much because his books have also made millions and have actually gained international fame as opposed to just domestic.
Plus the Netflix series and the Netflix animated movie, which are both good. Which are both really, really good.
And he smartened up for those. He did actually ask for royalties. So,
good.
You should also mention that CDPR very well respected the IP. If you read the books and take a look at the games, they are surprisingly close together.
It gets better with the further ones in. Like them switching Siri to a redhead because horny Americans will like her, and that's verbatim. I don't know how I feel about that. But they did typically get better the more they went along, and the more serious they realized, oh crap, people are actually going to play this. But on the other hand, like one of my favorite I don't want to say it's licensed. It's a licensed game because it legally isn't. But the S.T.A.L.K.E.R series, actually, they are based on.
That's a difficult one for me.
Why is that?
They are based on a film called Roadside Picnic, which is based on most specifically a film based on Roadside Picnic with the same premise of Chernobyl explodes. There is now a zone of fancy sci-fi nonsense. Except in the first game, there's like aliens. Sorry, the first book there's like aliens or something that didn't carry over.
Yeah, right.
Why didn't I just say Metro? Metro exists. Metro 2033.
Oh, is that
No,
based
I want
on?
to go back to. I want to go back to the S.T.A.L.K.E.R series.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
I've seen the movie and from the early '80s. I think it was one of the few Soviet movies that could be seen in the West, and it was more about aliens, and that's the reason why I've got some problems with the games because they are more in a Chernobyl setting, and I don't know if that was a good decision, in my opinion.
To base S.T.A.L.K.E.R on, like, in what way? What decision exactly?
The original Roadside Picnic novel and the movie were about aliens just stopping by and leaving again, and then people would go into the zone and look for the trash that the aliens left behind. Hence the title.
Yeah, and then S.T.A.L.K.E.R proper, like, focused more on the whole Chernobyl Cold War secret experiments thing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's fair. It's a different premise. I mean, they don't even share a name. So it is arguably fair that the premise is a bit different. But I'm actually wondering if S.T.A.L.K.E.R would have been better or worse with aliens. Actually, I guess without aliens, because they don't show up. At that point, they're gone. I feel that's a discussion for later, I feel. Before we gish gallop our way into minute 126. So what IPs I would like to see licensed properly? Okay, so since we can move off of space games, since we've mentioned most of the ones I wanted to, I would probably go into, like, I find it that games on the licensed IPs do better if the IP is more open towards like actual interpretation. It has more stuff in it when it comes to world building. Because if you're just playing a game based on a film and you're just replaying the film as the video game,
it's very constraining.
Yes, exactly.
You don't have as much to expand upon.
However, we have Star Wars as an IP franchise that had a lot of stuff. From Knights of the Old Republic to Empire at War to pretty much a game in every genre, and most of them were pretty good. I mean, it's still getting games, so in terms of stuff we'd want to see more, that's not on the list because I feel like we actually kind of have enough. But what else is there? Good Star Trek games are certainly an option. Like the best one we got recently was a mod for Sins of a Solar Empire, Star Trek Armada 3.
Yeah, it's Star Trek is really, in terms of video gaming, really just turned to garbage. It
has the big issue of, okay, the Star Trek Online, which took a long time to get decent. It started off on a bad foot. But the issue, of course, with Star Trek is it's a game about exploring and seeking out new life and new civilizations. And games are bad at, like, interaction that isn't just shooting things.
That's very true.
That is why the one good Star Trek game we remember is Klingon Academy. Because you're playing the Klingons. What do they do for a living? Shoot things.
And stab things. But no stabbing in that game.
Yes.
Well, in the movies there are, in the videos there are, but not in your part of the game.
Yeah. So I think we missed Julie out of like people who haven't said anything yet. So
yeah, and I had at least one more. But Julie, did you have an IP that you would like to see made into a video game?
Yes, I have 3.
Oh, okay. Go for it.
The first was mentioned briefly, and there's more to it than just the first book. And the first time I read the book, I was in the military and we were on maneuvers in the desert. So you can guess what the book is. And that is Dune. And I would say that at least No Man's Sky has the giant worm part nailed down.
that's a start.
But there is so much more to that series and more books than just that. And like the race of beings that bend space. But I would like to see something based not just on life in the desert, but that's my first choice. My second one, and I had completely forgotten about the game because it was so incredibly long ago, and the internet was only 5 years old at the time. And I'm guessing our host Brian thought it was a great game, but now when I think back on it, I thought it was kind of forgettable. But that's probably because now the graphics are so dated, it's like something you'd play on a watch. But that is the Neuromancer came out in '88, but there's a lot more to William Gibson's work, and there's the whole Sprawl trilogy, Neuromancer, Count Zero, Mona Lisa, Overdrive. And I'm not just talking about the whole cyberspace part of it. I also am enthralled by the artificial intelligence, which was like a citizen of Switzerland. And part of that is actually set in outer space. And my third choice is probably one I selected because it's probably not a really popular work, but I like steampunk, and we are now out of outer space. So, and the book was called Bone Shaker, and it's a book by Sherry Priest. And the whole premise of the book, what Bone Shaker referred to this giant drill, but because of the drill, half of the city of Seattle was destroyed. The whole city ends up being walled in, and it's very much a kind of a zombie thing, but it also has a lot of airship combat in it. So that was my 3 choices, but especially I like the whole Neuromancer thing, and I completely forgotten about the Neuromancer game, and I said, "Yeah, I played it back in college because it was an old DOS game," but I think how much more can be done with the works of William Gibson. So, those are my 3 choices.
Those are good choices. I never played that that game the game of called Neuromancer.
Neuromancer.
Yeah, I never played it. I just remember seeing it on the shelves back in the day.
I completely forgot about it because it was back when I was in undergraduate school in 1988 when dinosaurs roamed the earth, uh and the internet was only 5 years old. And so that's why I guess I've become spoiled by modern graphics. And when I look back on it, it was kind of a half-hearted tale, telling of the Neuromancer books by Neuromancer and the rest of the Sprawl trilogy. And there was so much more to William Gibson, just the Neuromancer. The closest we came was that it was based on Keanu Reeves and his Johnny Mnemonic.
There was also a Infocom text adventure where you played the AI. I can't remember the name of it, but it was really good.
Really? I can't remember that.
Yeah, the other 2 books were Count Zero and Mona Lisa Overdrive, which was one of my favorites.
In that vein, there is a game that recently came out, and I was a Kickstarter backer on that one, so full disclosure, called Game Deck, where you are a detective who jumps between virtual worlds, solving crimes within that happen within those worlds, and you have this kind of a dichotomy between doing stuff in the real world and doing stuff in the virtual one. And the virtual games are in all these different settings, so the setting can change based on the case you're working on. But because you're a detective, you do have to ask the right questions and look for clues and solve the cases. And it's really good. It's really, really good. But it's very much in that vein.
What I think is interesting is the Mona Lisa Overdrive book is technology has finally caught up to the book. And what I mean by that, there's this character which is sort of an AI. The character's name is Angie Mitchell, and but there's this character which is like this AI superstar, and now you see the technology exists so that we see Star Wars movies where the first time I had seen a character by someone who was long dead, I said, wasn't that person dead? How did they, in another time when they did a Star Wars movie with a young Luke Skywalker? And it's to the point now where Val Kilmer, who no longer has the use of his voice, they can have a computer that sounds just like Val Kilmer. So I think it's interesting that the Mona Lisa Overdrive story, that technology has finally caught up to the story.
It reminds me of the new iteration of ABBA. I don't know if you guys have heard of this, but ABBA is reunited and they're doing a new album and they're also doing a new concert. And the concert is going to be entirely 3D generated constructs of them in their prime.
Okay.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Really raking in the nostalgia, I see.
Hey, I mean, I'm here for it. I freaking love ABBA.
Respectable.
I'm just saying, like, it reminds what Julie just talked about reminded me of this computer generated ABBA that we're going to get a concert of. It's like, wait, what? What is happening? But
what year is it?
Yeah, I know. The game I was trying to think of that what Julie was talking about reminded me of is called A Mind Forever Voyaging. It's a 1985 Infocom game where you play the world's first sentient computer, and it is great. It is so great. And it'll make you cry if you play that game. Oh my God. So the other one I was going to bring up, it's a fantasy series. It's a mix of fantasy and alternate history. It's called the Temeraire series. If you haven't heard of it, it's basically the Napoleonic War with sentient dragons as each nation's air force. Basically. So like England has dragons, France has dragons, and they use them in battle.
So you just want Panzer Dragoon. That's fair. That's respectable.
Is that what Panzer Dragoon is? I've never played it. I've never played it. For the most
part, it's a like a Star Fox style shooter where you roll up on people on a dragon. It's basically a dragon arcade flight game.
Oh, well,
that's the theme of it.
Well, the dragons are so big, they're kind of ships because they have rigging and crews and
okay, so now that's a scale up from what I was expecting.
Yeah, they can get really, really big. They can be as big as ships. And they actually, in the universe, have giant ships that can carry the dragons from one place to another because they get so big. But yeah, the books focus on this naval commander. He's commanding a frigate, but he captures a French ship, and on that French ship is a Chinese dragon egg, and the egg hatches and totally imprints on him. So he has to leave the Navy and join the Air Force, basically. And it's a great series. It has a distinct beginning, middle, and end that goes along with the actual Napoleonic War. And it's a really great series. And I can just imagine like having kind of a turn-based like air combat game with dragons with crews and boarding, because there's boarding and you're also shooting at ships. The dragons the dragons each have different abilities that they can use against each other and the ships and whatnot. Like not every dragon has fire. Some have wind. Some have big claws that they can do like piercing attacks. And it's just such a variety of dragons. That would be such a great game. What are you going to say, Jacob?
I mean, it sounds like a better version of Divinity Dragon Commander, but that's
admittedly, yes, with more focus. Though
exactly,
honestly, in general, I feel like a turn-based boat game is something that should exist more in general. I can think of half of one.
Like another one I was going to bring up, kind of going in that vein, is either the Horatio Hornblower series or the Aubrey Maturin series.
Oh yeah, that would be nice.
Yeah, like there are quite a few Age of Sail games, which is good, but they're not really they don't really have a narrative to them. You know what I mean?
And they don't.
Go ahead.
And they don't get the feeling right, in my opinion.
A lot of them don't. A lot of them are very pulled back, war gamey things. Like a lot of them don't put you on the deck and have you make the moment to moment decisions that a captain would. A lot of them don't. I mean, there are some that do, but much more of them are more tactical and less personal. And that's why I think a game based on either the Hornblower series or the Aubrey Maturin series would be amazing. And I'm honestly shocked, given the popularity of both of those, that there haven't been. You know,
I was just thinking of the beginning of the movie Master and Commander.
Yes.
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 Series.
One of probably my favorite war movie is Master and Commander. Probably, 'cause it's just so good on like every level. That freaking movie.
I still find it hilarious that they had to change the nationality of the enemy ship.
I know.
They did? What?
Yeah, in the book, the enemy are the Americans. But they couldn't have that for an American movie.
Yeah.
So they
changed it to French.
They changed it to the French.
But they said that the ship was built by the Americans.
Yeah, it's basically an American ship. But
honestly, like considering the time period, it would be more likely to be the other way around. Was a French ship crewed by the Americans? Considering I'm pretty sure that actually happened in the War of Independence.
I recall, yeah, it was built by Americans, but what they said for the movie was that it was built by Americans and then it was commissioned for the French.
Apparently, okay, cool. That's dumb, but okay.
Yeah, that is probably the weakest part of that entire movie. Yeah, I still have to read those books, by the way. I'm about to start. I haven't read them yet.
What I would think would make a great movie along that, a great game along that, if you took the Master and Commander series, but instead of the Age of Sail, set it in like when humans are just voyaging into space, like just before the Expanse. So instead of sailing around the Horn, you'd encounter people sailing toward the moon, toward Mars, kind of thing.
Or sailing around the asteroid belt.
Kind of got that.
Did we?
In a game called Children of a Dead Earth, but that one is a bit more of a straight war game than any kind of
that game is
anything. Like I love it.
That game is amazing.
I think is not what Julie meant it right now. because it's a very hard sci-fi game. In my opinion, the best hard sci-fi war game that you can get right now. And but I think Julie meant something different.
No, she did. She did.
I did. Thorsten's right. See, what made Master and Commander great was it had nothing to do with the combat whatsoever. It was how the people were explored, their lives, and it would be the RPG part of it that I think would be really great.
Oh, totally agreed. No, I think what Jacob was saying is that there is a game in a similar setting, like early part of space flight, that sort of thing.
Yes,
but
a different focus.
But a different focus, yeah. Children of a Dead Earth is entirely a battle game, entirely a war game. But we're talking about more of an RPG, more of an exploration type of thing.
More like Pulsar, but with a bigger crew.
Yeah, like an actual ship crew, but a much smaller focus, like the solar system. There was gonna be a game like that. There was gonna be a game where it's focused solely on the solar system, and like it was going to deal with things in real time. I mean, you can accelerate time, but like the further you got away from things, the longer it would take to communicate back and forth. And there was going to be a game like that I cannot remember the name of. But
I can't help you, I'm afraid.
It never came to be. Like it was in the early phases. I think there was a failed Kickstarter for it. But yeah, no, I something along the lines of Master and Commander, but in the solar system. Well, we did have Treasure Planet. No, I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding. That's completely different.
But thanks for mentioning the expense. That's another one. I'm quite surprised there hasn't been any game made so far.
That's a good point. That is an excellent point. The book series is so popular, and the show is so popular. Even if you just made like, you wouldn't have to make this big sprawling thing. You could take a slice of the book where you're Amos kicking the shit out of people, and make that into a game.
Yes,
and I would just that.
Just do Voyager Elite Force, except it's the Expanse. Yes.
Or yeah, exactly. Yeah, make it something like that where you're Amos just kicking the hell out of people. I'd play that. Just
Mortal Kombat Amos.
Yeah.
Yes.
Doors and corners.
or how great would a prequel game be where you're Miller as a cop? You know, like
actual space cop Miller, yes.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yes, actual living space cop Miller, yes. That would also be great. Yeah, like there are a lot of possibilities for a game set in the Expanse universe and nothing. Did you know that there have been 2 attempts at a Firefly massively multiplayer online role-playing game?
I've heard something about it, and I've heard it, and I know it went exactly nowhere.
Yeah, they both went nowhere.
On our podcast, the other one I co-host, friend of a friend was one of the developers, and we had interviewed them, and because of a whole bunch of problems, they had to like start all over with their game, and then it just kind of dropped off the face of the earth.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so funny that there are 2 of them, 2 attempts, and both times they just went fit. It just kind of fizzled out. Like,
still don't get that. Really,
I don't either. How can
you blow this?
I don't know, because the Firefly universe would have also been a great computer game. I mean, they made a pen and paper role playing game out of it. That was the last role playing game I ran. Actually,
I feel like that should be topic number 2. TRPGs based on space games, because there's a few of those.
Yeah, the game that was gonna come out, that was going to be like a mobile game, they actually had the original cast members and, some have now since gone, like Ron Glass is dead now, but they actually had the original cast members signed up to, do the game, the voices.
Crap. Man, that sucks. Oh. Yeah, it is baffling that there have been all these great properties that we love, like The Expanse, and someone in the chat brought up Farscape. A lot of people love Farscape. I know that. I never got into it myself.
There was actually a Farscape game. There was.
Oh, there was.
There was. Yeah.
There was like one.
It was a flash in the pan kind of licensed game, though. It didn't really go anywhere, and that's why people don't remember it.
Oh.
But yeah, it did exist.
Okay. I had no idea.
I've got to look that up.
Yeah, I had no idea. Yeah, no Stargate games. Like, what's up with that?
There were attempts, and one of them actually did get licensed. But again, that was a flash in the pan kind of thing.
Oh wait, isn't one coming out from the Slytherin folks? Aren't we getting one now?
Yes-ish.
Yeah.
They announced it, and then we haven't heard anything of it since.
It was announced only, a month or two ago, though. So.
No, it was longer ago than that. It was way longer ago than that.
Yeah, it's Stargate Timekeepers, apparently. A real-time strategy game that,
Yeah.
we got a reveal trailer. That's something.
Yeah, it was announced
the reveal trailer is what I was thinking of, because that was more recent.
It was announced in May.
We got a reveal trailer and information that it's going to be made by the lads who made Battlestar Galactica Deadlock. So admittedly, it is in good hands.
Yeah. Because
that game was good.
That was a great game. I would not imagine, though, for some reason, when I think Stargate, I don't think real-time strategy.
Well,
that's fair.
Well, if they're focusing on space combat, which they absolutely could, then yeah, it would work in the same vein as Deadlock did.
Okay.
I mean, the reason why, from what I'm gathered, that did is because part of the development team actually was also there was a rather big Stargate mod for Homeworld 2. And apparently part of the development team is shared with that. So that's why they went for that genre, presumably because we're talking about people who already have basically made the same game before in a different engine.
Oh, okay. And again, yeah, Black Lab, the folks that made Battlestar Galactica Deadlock, which, why aren't there more games of that? I don't know. I mean, we have 2. Or no, 3.
2 good ones.
3. We had 3. Why aren't there more games of that? I don't know, but Deadlock was admittedly great, so that's encouraging. But yeah, it's weird there are not other series. What was that?
Nothing. Sorry.
Oh, I thought someone said something.
There was going to be the Stargate Worlds series and the only game, and the only reason it stopped was because of a lawsuit between people over who actually controlled the IP at the time, is my understanding.
Oh, sick. The usual.
I mean, that's usually what kills licensed games in progress, is
licenses.
Yeah.
The licenses themselves.
I mean, there was a game that I had been a closed beta tester on that never got made into fruition because I'll tell you what it was. It was actually based on the Mummy series.
What?
Yeah.
The Brendan Fraser one?
Yeah. Yeah. And it was being developed by Big Point, the German company who also made Battlestar Galactica Online. So I got pulled into the closed beta testing on it, and it never went anywhere. It was an ARPG, Diablo style.
Oh wow!
With that setting, and it never went anywhere.
Oh, that would have been great. I could so easily imagine the Mummy series being this great Diablo style ARPG.
But it wasn't. Well,
Oh,
it was never to be, sadly.
Well, no, I think they went as far as they could with it, and they realized that it wasn't actually all that fun.
oh.
So it was a different problem. Like, we're not actually missing out, at least not from that particular development.
I can safely say, as someone who spent many hours closed beta testing, no, it was not that fun. So you're not missing out. It would have been forgettable. It would have been heavily cash shop monetized the same way that they did with the Battlestar Galactica Online. Had it made it to fruition, and it also would have been browser based.
Oh,
so even more so.
It was this. Such was the style at the time, I believe.
Yes, very much.
Yeah.
Since Spaz brought up monetized, I just wanted to interject here that my favorite licensed games, and in one I actually have a lifetime subscription to, but when I see what's happened with the Star Wars and Star Trek game and the loot boxes makes me want to just like bring one up from the ground when I see somebody depending on whales to finance a licensed game. Just charge me a subscription and be done with it.
Wait, which game?
They've realized that model doesn't work as well, because although the number of people who actually pay in it's a fluctuating number, the fact that there are whales who will, just to not have to grind as much, pay as much as they do, that's enough to convince the shareholders this is what we want to do, and that's why they go with these tactics. Well, it's unfortunate, but that's the way the people at the top think will make them more money, and it unfortunately is true because people keep falling for it.
Well, a good example of what you just said in Star Trek Online is I got a friend that just lives for this game. And as soon as Star Trek Discovery came out, he had to have the sarcophagus ship, and he spent like $70 opening the little loot boxes. But if he was just willing to be patient and play the game, by the end of a year, he could have had it for free. So it just loot boxes just really irritate me, and I hate to see that in any licensed game.
Or probably any
game. Unfortunately, it is also a way to sell it to the license holders of a way that they will make a lot more money off of the selling of the IP.
Ugh. Yeah, you're not wrong.
It's game development by shareholder committee is what it comes down to. And that also kills a lot of licensed games too, because the shareholders don't think they're going to make enough money off of it. So they get unhappy, and that kills development.
Yeah, I think that's the primary reason.
Yeah, the license holders themselves are the primary reason there aren't a lot of licensed games.
It also depends on who has the license, who's being sold the license, and the development company and their shareholders, because they have to convince the shareholders that this is a good investment in the IP. So it's so much back and forth between who has the IP, who's developing the game, who they're marketing it to in the end, and how much the shareholders are thinking they're going to get as their return on investment. And if those all don't match up, you don't get a game.
That's a good point.
On the other hand, you get games like the two Riddy games you mentioned.
Yeah, and sometimes that works out because the shareholders know they're going to make a profit, but also because they leave the development team alone and let them do what they need to do. And
also the guy that created the company is also the guy who plays Riddick. So
there's that too.
Apparently Vin Diesel is a huge video gamer. He's a huge gamer in general, apparently, and
Good.
And that's one of the reasons. But then you wonder why every Fast and Furious game has been terrible. So it's like, what's going on there?
Part of it, I wonder if isn't when I interviewed Paul Barnett once, he talked about when you say about financing of the games he was involved with, and I know there's a lot of tendency for people to say, "Oh, Paul Barnett," but he said in the companies he dealt with, like when Mythic was an actual thing, he would say people would see the success of World of Warcraft at the time when it had more players in Switzerland. He said he called it a fluke of nature because investors that he dealt with would see that success and say, "Gee, I want to duplicate it," and he'd say, "There's no way you're going to duplicate that."
Everyone wants to be the next Call of Duty.
Or the next Dota, or the next World of Warcraft, or the next this and that. Yeah.
Or it's the next Warhammer 40K game.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's a whole nother topic. Is overused licenses. Like I love Warhammer games, but God,
how many good ones are there?
I'd say 1 in 4, maybe. Maybe.
Even that, I feel like might be highballing it, especially for like 40K specific.
I don't know. I do like a lot of them. I'm fairly easy to please. Like I loved what's that Necromunda shooter that came out recently? That was really good.
Hired Gun.
Yeah, that's really good. But then you had that tactical Necromunda game that came out, I think, late last year. That was not very good.
Why?
Yeah, that game wasn't good at all. But God, there are so many Warhammer games.
Yeah, it's a setting with so much potential for good games that no one seems to bother tapping into for some reason. Like,
yes,
yeah,
it's a game with it's a setting with so much variety. It's got freaking insane super soldiers. It's got every conceivable style of military combatant from 1850 onward. So you could make any conceivable shooter or strategy game.
Yeah.
You could genuinely there's so much you could do with it, and no one seems to bother with it.
I mean,
not only that, you've got to imagine the original was a game about traders fighting each other on over loot. The original Rogue Trader. Nobody does a Rogue Trader game.
Yeah, no, despite the fact that it would be the best thing ever because Rogue Trader would just be, you're in charge of a cathedral-sized warship. Enjoy.
Wait, what's
right?
Wait, what? So hang on. What is Rogue Trader?
Okay, allow me to clarify. Originally, the first edition of Warhammer 40,000 was called Warhammer 40,000 Rogue Trader, and it was actually a tabletop RPG that later got developed into a war game. In setting, Rogue Traders are basically people who serve the Imperium of Man, and by serve I mean don't, and by don't I mean they basically got private ownership of a massive vessel and a carte blanche to do whatever they want with it.
Oh, okay.
Which has theoretically infinite potential, because you are literally literally just an independent independent agent motivated by capital alone, in ownership of a city-sized warship, and can interact with and are one of the few things that can interact freely with any aspect of the setting without immediately getting shot.
I think the only Rogue Trader I've seen in any 40K game is in my favorite ARPG ever, Inquisitor Martyr. You get a ship. Your ship is a rogue
ferrying you around. Yes,
yeah, is a Rogue Trader. The person ferrying around is a Rogue Trader. And I think that's the only time I've ever seen that in a 40K game.
Despite them being blatant, game material because, again, literally you can do anything. You're an independent agent with your own ship, your own crew, and your own sick desires. Go ahead, make your day.
So I heard somewhere, and I think I watched a video about like an intro video into 40K, into Warhammer lore and 40K lore. And doesn't Warhammer have more lore to it than both Star Wars and Star Trek combined?
It's been going on since the 70s, yes.
Yeah, and so, but it seems like a lot of Warhammer games, and there are a lot of good ones. Don't get me wrong, but a lot of them don't like seem to take full advantage of.
They really don't. No.
Like my favorite one.
That's a primary problem. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my favorites have been like Battlefleet Gothic 2 and Inquisitor and Dark Omen and a bunch of the old SSI games. But there have been so many games that just
do nothing with the massive setting. And now that GW has re-engaged its stranglehold over its IP for reasons unfathomable, the chances of us getting more good games is technically higher, but also by process of elimination less likely. It's less likely that the IP will wind up in someone's hands, full stop.
That's discouraging, because I do love good Warhammer games, but
like, what are we getting in terms of Warhammer games? We're getting Darktide, which is Vermintide and 40K.
Yeah, again,
we made a whole shooter in Warhammer. We actually had a few of those already. Maybe this one will be good, but not exactly Untapped. It's not exactly uncharted territory.
If we're just sticking with 40K, I really don't know what else besides that is coming down the pike. I mean, we have
because that's it. That covers it. And okay, Total War Warhammer 3, but that's fantasy.
That's fantasy, but that's it. Oh God. Yeah, that's a property that needs some refinement. Like, I guess that's another topic. Like, there are a lot of games have been made with a specific property, but have they all been good? Have they all been worth it? And I guess the question for Warhammer is not really. I mean, the answer is I love Warhammer games, but they're not all very good. So I guess the same with Star Trek and Star Wars too. Like, there are a lot of games for both of those, and they're not all very good.
Yeah, because a lot of them. Okay, carry on.
That was something I wanted to mention. You got a lot of Star Wars games, but in my opinion, they aren't really for me. The whole universe is so large, and they concentrate only on this fight of good versus evil, and that's a bit sad in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that
do so much with this universe.
Well, I think that's one of the reasons The Mandalorian is so popular, because before that, rarely did we see like the fringes of the universe as much as we have.
Outside of expanded universe, which has been butchered and decanonized, which
that's a separate reason for why all of that has happened, is because so much of that has changed as to what's canon and what's not.
Yeah, and
most
additionally,
left behind.
Yeah,
even Clone Wars and Rebels and such, like, still showed us more of that big good versus evil, big, galactic. But it's nice that we at least get The Mandalorian, which shows us a little more of an intimate side of the universe. But the games don't really do that very much, if at all, really.
Well, this is why when Battlefront 2 came out, I played the campaign because I was really interested in the characters. But then when it came to the PvP part, I just lost interest in it almost immediately.
Yeah. Well, is it because you don't have an interest in PvP, or is it because they've done it so many times before?
No, see, what it was is the outer space part of the combat. It was like the same thing over and over and over. I've done PvP and I did enjoy the outer space part, but it was like after I've done it for a few hours, it was like it got to be drudgery. But I really like when they explored the actual characters.
Yeah, that is a thing. Star Wars is very character driven, and when you take character out of it, it doesn't do as well, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Shame.
Okay.
So, is there anything else anybody wanted to talk about?
There was one I wanted to mention.
Go for it.
Oh, go ahead.
It's a. I'd mentioned this in our admin chat while we were prepping for the show. There is an anthology series, a fantasy anthology series called The Thieves' World books, and they're written as short stories told by various storytellers, as in different authors, realistically speaking, but all these different storytellers are telling these tales of a city called Sanctuary. And you have all these different factions, from the priests who live on the Avenue of Temples, and they're all trying to curry favor with their own gods, and they're trying to compete with the other temples out there. You have the prostitutes on the Street of Red Lanterns, as it's called in universe. You have a prince who has been assigned to the city, and he's now trying to gain order in this city that is populated by all these different thieves and merchants and everybody in between. And depending on who's telling the story, the perspectives can change, and events may seem to conflict with the events given by other people before. They could be describing the same event, but because an author's perspective can differ, and what you consider canon isn't really canon because it's all a matter of perspective, so to speak. There's a lot of lore underlying all of that, and a lot of potential for world building that I would love to see in more games. If you want to put it in space, set it on a space station. You could transfer a lot of the factions over and conflicts over, and it would still work. It got 2 or 3 TSR workbooks, or not workbooks, but world books, crossing over with D&D. And it got a board game called Sanctuary by Mayfair Games, which got a re-release 20 or odd years ago. But there's been no video game adaptation to my knowledge. And there's nothing quite like it.
That sounds like a really great setting for any kind of game, really.
Yeah, it would make a good fantasy game too.
Right. I mean, you could even set it in something like Babylon 5. And many of the factions would be much the same. Or Deep Space Nine, for that matter. Trade out the Street of Red Lanterns for the Hollow Suites, and, well, there you go.
Street of Red Lanterns.
The very literal red light district.
Yeah, exactly.
So, is there anything else anyone else wanted to bring up?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just want to close the circle and return to a few book series that offer unique settings, like the Alliance Union novels by C.J. Cherry, or the Humanx series by Alan Dean Foster, and they all offer unique settings. A lot of those let's say older books are very, very well developed in many ways, and I wished game devs would be a bit more courageous and take a look at those settings. I mean, some do, especially especially indie developers do that, but we don't get any AAA titles from that direction,
or even AA. Yeah, it's a shame that there are all these IPs out there with all this potential that just isn't getting anything in terms of video games.
I've got to say, I understand the big game studios that they don't do it because it's a risk, and they don't take those risks. It's a thing of money. Simply said.
Yeah. I actually had one more I was going to throw out there.
Okay.
It's effectively a dead IP, unfortunately. Mainly because the owning company is been out of business since its lawsuit with FASA.
Robotech?
No, actually, no. That would be Exo Squad. That's the one I'm thinking of. And it's actually related to Robotech because its follow-up season was going to be a crossover between Robotech and the Exo Squad property. However, the lawsuit with FASA happened, and that killed the possibility of that because Playmates went out of business. Now, to be fair, there were a couple of console games that were made. One on Genesis, and actually, I think there was only the one on Genesis. Now that I think about it.
I think you might be right. Yeah. I played it on emulation a little while back. It's hard.
Yeah.
A hard game.
and there was a board game adaptation.
What?
Which I own. Yeah, I actually own the board game adaptation of it, which is weird because it was a board game made by committee and it has no game developer credited on it. Which is, it's kind of weird, but I guess that's the way that worked with some licensed properties back then. They just didn't go ahead and decide to put a designer credit on there. But that's one where you would have so much lore to work within. You could have varying gameplay. You have the exoframes, which are very close to power armor, as used in many other properties. You have space battles, which could feature them as well. Ships of the size of carriers. You had so much to work with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Aside
from the one game,
if you haven't seen Exo Squad, in America at least, it's now streaming on Peacock, which is shocking. Because for a while,
familiar, dare I say,
for a while only the first season was available on DVD. But now Peacock somehow has both seasons. And season 2 is like 4 times the size of season 1. Season 1's like 13 episodes. Season 2 is like 50 episodes. So it's a lengthy cartoon and it's really good. Especially
it got very dark at certain parts.
So dark especially for an American cartoon in the early 90s. It got really dark.
And it was heavily anime inspired, which is one of the reasons why it trended toward an older teenage audience.
Yeah.
Or who they marketed it to.
Yeah, I watched it. I watched the hell out of it back in the day.
As did I.
So good. But yeah, that would have been a great series of games. You could have had a game just about the exoframes. You could have had a game, just about being a gorilla on Mars. God, so much potential with that one. Now I'm angry. Again.
Yeah, if someone was able to get that license and then, get the game license for it, there could be so much to work with. But
so much.
Alas.
Well, if I win the lottery, that's what I'm doing. Exo Squad game. 100%. if I ever win, I'd have to play in order to win.
And the only winning move is not to play.
Yes. So does anybody else have anything they want to bring up?
I'm good.
Me too.
All right, I guess. All right, I guess we will end it there, my friends. Next week on the show, we are going to have, well, not our first guest, but for this particular iteration of the podcast, our first guest. Next week, a little while back, you might all have heard a game that a lot of us love called HunterNet Starfighter. Well, the wife of the developer of that game clued us into another game called Fly Dangerous. Apparently, in Elite Dangerous, there's racing. Apparently.
There is? What?
Yes. But apparently, it is entirely player run, and you have to go out into the universe and find it. There's no official racing in the game. It is completely player run.
Oh, it's not mechanized anymore. Yeah, I see.
Yeah.
Damn it.
I know. Again, another opportunity lost. But in a way, not so, because a lone developer has taken that concept of space and vehicle racing and is making an entire game out of it called Fly Dangerous, which you can download now to try out. The early version is on itch.io right now. Let me put a link. The hell is it? I had the link a second ago. Here it is. I'll put it in the chat. You can download an early version now on itch.io to try it for yourself. We're going to have the developer on of this game next week to talk about it. So our first guest together, you guys. Very excited about that. So yeah, that's going to do it for this week, folks. Very lively chat. Again, thank you so much for everyone who hung out today and talked in the chat and gave us some stuff to talk about. Great chat today. And with that, we will see you back here next week. Same bat time, same bat channel to talk about Fly Dangerous. Have a great week, everyone, and we'll see you back here next week. Bye-bye.
Ciao.
Bye.
Bye.